The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Accelerating Industry-Led Regional Partnerships for Talent Development Program webinar. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Just a quick overview of today's agenda before we get started. We will start out this discussion with a quick welcome introduction. Obviously, this is Nathan Oley. I am the Special Advisor for External Affairs here at the Economic Development Administration, joined by several others here from EDA, which we will introduce as they come on. But we will first give a quick overview of this program, this webinar, given to us by our Assistant Secretary for Economic Development, Mr. Jay Williams. Then we will pass the baton over to Jack Cobb, who's going to go over the activities, outcomes, and definitions of this federal funding opportunity, along with the technical details, including eligibility, match, deadline, etc. And then there will be a time at the end for questions. You can submit your questions right through the GoToWebinar feature, and at the end of the session, we will answer as many of those as we can, time permitting. But once again, thank you again for joining us, and I'd like to introduce our Assistant Secretary for Economic Development, Mr. Jay Williams.
Thanks, Nathan. Good afternoon. This is Jay Williams, and I am pleased that you have joined us for the webinar today as we discuss the overview of the Accelerating Industry-Led Regional Partnerships for Talent Development. I'm pleased to be joined this afternoon by Brian Borlick. Brian is the Director of EDA's Performance and National Programs Office, and Jack Cobb. Jack is one of our program analysts, and shortly he will provide an additional overview and more details with respect to this announcement. Last month, Secretary Pritzker announced that EDA is accepting proposals for a national partner to help coordinate the Accelerating Industry-Led Regional Partnerships for Talent Development Program. The program is being funded through EDA's Research and Evaluation Program. Our program supports the development of tools, recommendations, and resources that shape federal economic development policies and inform economic development decision-making at the local level. Under the federal funding opportunity, EDA is seeking a national partner to help develop and implement a new learning exchange program. The program will focus on building critical public-private partnerships to accelerate job skills development across the country. The availability of a skilled workforce is often cited as a primary factor considered by businesses in their investment decision process. The learning exchanges created through this initiative will help meet the skills needs of businesses by identifying, promoting, and expanding on successful industry-driven regional partnerships for talent development. By encouraging such partnerships, the program will help build the regional pools of workers with skills that are in demand by employers in their communities. This will lend itself to job creation and increased business investment. So under the FFO, EDA will select a partner that, again, will promote cross-partnership learning across regions to build, sustain, and scale existing and new regional partnerships for talent development that support regional economic development. We're also looking for a partner that will convene and learn from regional partnerships that have demonstrated success in addressing the talent development needs of business and industry. Also, one that will inform the long-term talent and skills development strategy for EDA and ways to increase sustainability, scalability, and continuous improvement. The deadline for these proposals is January 9th, 2015. Proposals should incorporate the job-driven training checklist recently released from the White House report titled Ready to Work, Job-Driven Training and American Opportunity. We'll have more on that momentarily. But let me conclude with this. Ensuring that our regions have the skilled workforce they need to keep our businesses strong and our economy growing is a major priority for the administration and the U.S. Department of Commerce. Secretary Pritzker has met with nearly 1,200 CEOs and business leaders who agree that workforce skills development is an issue that must be addressed. She has made improving the linkages between training programs and employer needs a top priority in the department's Open for Business agenda. So again, thank you for joining us here today and for your interest in helping us to advance our workforce training and economic development goals. Jack Cobb will now provide a more detailed overview of this project. It's my pleasure to turn this program over to Jack. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, and thank everyone for joining us today. We're going to discuss the goals EDA seeks to accomplish, activities we anticipate the successful applicant will engage in, and cover a couple important technical details for applications. Through this FFO, EDA seeks to accelerate the understanding of successful regional partnerships for talent development to understand how and why industry-led regional partnerships lead to better outcomes for employers, workers, and the regional economy, and accelerate the adoption of industry-led regional partnerships for talent development. The first thing we're hoping to accomplish is to convene and facilitate learning across regional partnerships that have demonstrated success in addressing the talent development needs of business and industry. Second, we hope to identify and understand the characteristics of successful industry-led partnerships and the barriers to succeed at the local and regional level. Finally, we hope to develop best practice reports, learning tools, and case studies within and across regions to build, sustain, and scale existing as well as new regional partnerships for talent development that support regional economic development. Go next slide, please. When we select a national partner, EDA anticipates that they will assist us by developing selection criteria and also administer a competitive selection process to identify participating regions. Then they will administer a learning exchange that would include convening participant regions at a national level to learn about best practices, successful tools, and implementation challenges, as well as the national partner will visit participating regional teams to facilitate development and adoption of best practices locally in their region. Finally, the national partner would devise ways to disseminate sort of what works strategies to regions not participating in learning exchange, how they can build on the learning exchange program. A couple, I'm sure many of you saw the definitions in the FFO. A couple key terms that we hope you all will take time to look through are regional partnerships, industry-led, talent development, learning exchange, and region or regional. These are all contained on page 6 of the FFO, and I strongly encourage you to read through this in detail so that when you're working on applications, you can make sure that we are all talking the same language, and when you say industry-led, we are also reading the same term that you're discussing. An important definition that we intentionally did not make, that a number of people have asked about, is how EDA defines national partner. EDA has not really coming into this with any preconceived notion of who or what the national partner would be. The FFO describes a number of capacities and competencies that we feel would be necessary. These are contained in section 4, subpart 2, and then paragraphs 1 through 5, which I strongly encourage everybody to read very closely. If you look at the PowerPoint, it highlights the sort of build and manage a consortium of partners. This would be sort of whether it's in-house or with partner organizations, specialists who have the technical skills and abilities to provide technical assistance in different sort of workforce, economic development, business development, as well as managing and organizing a national level convening. The ability to run the learning exchange, develop protocol in the competition, produce and disseminate learning research products, as well as just product management on the backside of the grant. These are all the areas we hope you all look through, and if you feel that you are able to successfully accomplish those tasks, as well as the way we evaluate them in section 4A2, then you are probably, it is worth you applying to compete to be the national partner. A few technical details I wanted to run through quickly. Eligibility is open to more or less any non-private sector entity. It could be anything from a county, university, foundation, nonprofit. Obviously, given the capabilities and capacity issues that I just discussed previously, that will sort of influence, while an organization might be eligible, they might not be the best qualified. In that case, we'd encourage you maybe consider building partnerships with somebody who might be able to help increase your competitiveness. The maximum level of funding available, EDA anticipates awarding up to $500,000, of which the applicants will have to match at least 20%. You may apply for less than $500,000, but you may not apply for more. EDA anticipates the project duration will be for 18 months from the start date. And as well in your application, you can tell us when you anticipate your start date being. Deadline is January 9th at midnight, and you must submit through grants.gov. On this point, I will highlight it again when we're wrapping up. Please sign up for grants.gov early. Evaluation criteria are contained in the FFO. It's a lengthy section, so I'm not going to go through it all in detail, but please read through it in detail, as well as the project description, project narrative. These will be very important points for you to consider in developing as well as crafting your response to the FFO. And again, the timeline moving forward is that we will have the competition close on January 9th at midnight. And to wrap up, for more information, we encourage you all to check out our website, www.eda.gov, where you'll find a tab dedicated to federal funding opportunities, and in there you'll see Accelerating Industry-Led Regional Partnerships for Talent Development. That will have the FAQ, a one-page fact sheet, a link to the FFO, a copy of this webinar will be made available, and a number of other resources. Again, on grants.gov, I strongly encourage everybody to sign up. Make sure you have all of your SAM.gov and other sort of technical issues taken care of ahead of time. If there's a technical issue, we do not want that to disqualify you from consideration for this competition. And every competition, there are always people who, at 12:05 or 12:08 a.m. are trying to submit, and that we are not allowed to consider those applications. And if you have technical issues, if you document them, legal counsel will have to decide, but usually we are not able to accept those either. Since there is so much time ahead, please submit early and contact grants.gov with any technical issues or problems.
Well, thank you, Jack and Jay, for taking the time today to go over this program. We do have an opportunity here to answer some questions. Within the webinar here, there's a portion under questions to submit any questions you have. I know that we do have one question submitted through the webinar already, and I'm going to let Brian and Jack go at those questions as they come up.
Thanks, Nathan. This is Brian Borlick. Thanks, everybody, for being on the webinar today. There's a question about the purpose of today's webinar is exclusively about a national partner, or if we're looking for regional partners. Just to be clear, this webinar is an overview about the opportunity as a whole. In terms of applications, what they're for a national partner. But of course, once we have a national partner selected, that national partner will steer the work in working with regions. So as Jack described with the learning exchanges. So this is certainly about, as it says in the title, regional partnerships. But the applications that, or the federal funding opportunity that we're referring to here, applications would come from a potential national partner.
Yes, as the new super circular comes into effect on December 26th, and so this grant will be covered under those new regulations.
The next question is, can private sector consulting firms be part of the proposed team with funding allocated to them to complete the project work?
The answer to that would be yes. The question is, how exactly would that work? So EDA is not able, by statute, to make grants to for-profit companies, for-profit firms. However, the national partner, which would be an eligible entity, as Jack mentioned, such as a national nonprofit, a university, state, county, or so forth, the applicant, the eligible applicant, upon successful competition, when that applicant is selected and becomes the grantee, could certainly have a subcontract to a private consultant. And the applicant could certainly address in the application, within the narrative and budget, in terms of their plan for how to engage in this work, could certainly outline any plans for using private consultants, but the grant wouldn't actually go to a private firm.
The next question is, will learning exchanges be sector-based, i.e. manufacturing, health, energy, or et cetera?
So the idea, there's nothing explicit up front about the learning exchanges being sector-based. However, the point of the federal funding opportunity and soliciting applications is to get the good ideas that you have out there about how to go about this. So we would certainly be open to ideas within your proposal, but I wouldn't say that that's what we had in mind at this point, but open to ideas.
The next question is, would an existing regional talent development program that will commence next year be better suited for regional partnership, or would you encourage an application towards the national partnership?
I think, if I understand the question correctly, if you have an existing regional partnership, I think you'd probably be better suited to apply to be a participant community. That said, if you have the capacity and the ability to run this national program, obviously we encourage you to apply to be the national partner.
That looks like the last question at this time. If anyone else has questions, please submit them. We'll give you another minute or two. Just so everyone knows, we have recorded this webinar, and we'll make both the slides and the webinar available on our website. And we'll also be emailing those out to those that registered for this webinar. Looks like we got a couple additional questions. The first one is there an assumption or expectation about the number of regions to be competitively selected?
We do not. A lot of this is sort of a new model for doing things, and so we do sort of hope that the national partner will propose a number of these types of project details, though obviously this partnership between EDA and the national partner will be a cooperative agreement, and so it is an area that we can discuss further and sort of finalize together. But we do hope that the national partner will propose those types of details for how they will execute the learning exchanges and regional competitions.
The next question is, how many regional learning exchanges will be established?
Again, that's the same thing. We expect the national partner will propose how to do that in their application to EDA.
The next question is, how will the rollout of these regional planning efforts interface with planning for the implementation of the new WIOA? Is there coordination with the U.S. Department of Labor at the federal level, and will there be a comparable requirement at the local level?
So we have been working closely with the Department of Labor as we've developed this federal funding opportunity. So yes, we are working at the federal level with the Department of Labor. Again, I think while there's nothing explicit up front in the federal funding opportunity about this coordination with planning, we would certainly welcome suggestions on how to go about doing that at the regional level within the application.
The next question is, under eligible applicants, can you talk about the reasoning for why a nonprofit organization must act in cooperation with officials of a political subdivision or state? Also, can a nonprofit partner with an institution of higher learning be eligible?
Yes, that is a statutory requirement for EDA. However, the Assistant Secretary has waived the requirement for national programs to have that letter of support, since obviously it's not applicable on the national level. A nonprofit partner with Institute of Higher Learning, that would absolutely be eligible. Both nonprofits and universities or colleges are eligible in their own rights, and they're also eligible through a partnership together.
The next question is this linked to IMCP?
So not directly linked explicitly to IMCP. However, connecting or improving the connections between workforce communities and economic development communities, and ensuring that the workforce and economic development communities both are reflecting the demands of regional businesses. To that extent, I mean, that's a significant or important part of both IMCP and this project. So I think they're linked in that way.
The next question I think has already been answered. Does EDA have expectations regarding the number of national and regional meetings? So we'll move on to the next one. Must all national partners be named in the application, or can we indicate that they will be named after the award is received?
You could, it's not required, but your application is going to be more competitive if you're able to successfully outline the partners that you plan to be working with.
The next question is, if we apply for a regional partnership, are funds available for us?
So in terms of applying for a regional partnership, so we're applying under this federal funding opportunity to be the national partner. The funding would go to the national partner, and then the national partner would expend those funds in the learning exchanges to facilitate those learning exchanges. I'm not sure if that answers the question. I don't believe we would have money going directly to a regional organization, but I don't think that's out of the question.
The next question is, does EDA expect that the grantee will use grant funds for costs associated with planning and facilitating regional meetings, such as audiovisual and meeting room costs? Does EDA expect that these meetings will be held in federal or non-federal spaces?
We do expect that the grant funds will be used to pay for the expenses related to the learning exchanges, and whether or not to use federal facilities is up to the national partner, and obviously through the cooperative agreement. If it's something they want to pursue, we can try to help them, but that would probably be very difficult outside of maybe something small at our own offices.
The next question is, are 501c6 organizations eligible to apply?
So it needs to be a nonprofit focused on educational activities, networking activities, and so forth. You'll find this within the should find this within the FFO. Specifically about 501c6, I suppose it depends on what the focus of the organization is. I think that may be one that we should follow up on. Yeah, why don't we just commit to following up on that?
Yeah, we will get a question. We will get an answer to that in the FAQ document by mid-late next week.
The next question is, typically EDA requires that for-profit subgrantees must be bid competitively. Are you suggesting that this provision will be waived in this application?
So no, we do typically expect that there's competitive bidding. If an applicant was going to do otherwise, there'd need to be a good explanation. It's not out of the question, but we do stick to the tenet of competitive bidding.
The next question is, can you expand on the learning exchanges aspect?
Yes, I mean, if you look through there are a number of sort of things we detail. We would expect that the learning exchange will be an opportunity for the national partner first to provide some technical assistance and guidance, help facilitate these partnerships at the local level, and then as well, the national learning exchange will bring them all together and help start these conversations to distill some of the best practices across each community, have them sort of discuss their shared advantages, what they think works best, what some of their challenges everybody faced, and that will, in many ways, we think will help not only the communities learn more about themselves and each other, but also help the national partner in developing the best possible best practices or what works guides to disseminate out to the communities that were not able to participate.
The next question is, can a for-profit partner with others be the grantee?
So I see you joined late. We talked about that earlier, that EDA by statute cannot provide grants to for-profit entities. However, they can certainly be partners or subcontractors with the eligible grantee.
The next question is, what attributes would be considered desirable for an institution of higher education to qualify?
I would think that's a great question. I would think that what would be most desirable is a very good network or good connections between that university and the workforce and economic development communities in that region. That the university is actively engaged with the communities, with the workforce and economic development communities, and can facilitate their working together.
The next question is, can a partnership be characterized as co-applicants?
Yes, we will accept co-applicants, and there is information in the FFO about the specific paperwork that different parties have to fill out.
The next question is, if a consultant is identified in the grant application, are they guaranteed work if the proposed team is selected, or will the requested work have to go through an RFP process?
So they wouldn't be guaranteed. The proposal that we receive in an application is just that, it's a proposal. And while the grant being made is certainly a contract, there can always be changes in the scope of work and the partnerships and so forth. So I would not say that there's a guarantee, but we'd be looking to our national partner to ensure that we have, that they have the best partnerships in place. And there probably needs to be some flexibility there in order to ensure that the best partnerships are consistently in place. I wouldn't say guaranteed.
Well, it looks like that's the last question that we have. As I said before, we did record this webinar, and we'll be sending that out to you as well as making it available on our website. Once again, if you have questions, there is an FAQ that is out on the website for your accessibility. But thank you again to Assistant Secretary Jay Williams, to Jack Cobb and Brian Borwick, and for all of you for spending time with us today. Looks like we did get one last question here that we will take before we finish up, and that is, can funding for an existing program be considered as part of the matching funding requirements?
I think it kind of depends. We'd have to have more detail on what is meant by funding for an existing program. Essentially, to be considered match, it has to go to the purpose, the specific purpose of what the federal funds are being spent on. So that's we just need some more detail there to be able to answer that well, I think.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you participating and look forward to some great applications.